Hi, this is Cherie with Soliloquies, and this video is going to be about collage quilting. One art quilt technique that's simple for beginners but flexible for creative experts is collage quilting. Collage is a technique that uses small pieces assembled to form the larger image. In traditional art, collage can be paper or mixed media. In quilting, the collage is created using pieces of fabric, usually quilting cotton. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate and explain the process of creating a collage quilt. The steps I use include choosing a design, creating the foundation, choosing fabric, placing and adhering the pieces in several different techniques, and then building up that design in layers. There's so many subjects you can choose from when creating a collage quilt. The most common images are flowers or plants, animals, still life, landscapes, and portraits. Any of these can be created in any style, like realistic, representational, or abstract. Choosing the image to create can be the hardest part. I suggest choosing one of the subject categories and then looking for a reference image. A reference image can be a drawing you have done, a photograph you have taken, or an image you've found. Finding an image to use that you don't own is what I call the platypus problem. The platypus is a rare and unique animal from Australia, which is as elusive as finding that perfect reference image. The problem is, you can't just use any image or photograph you find on the internet, because those images are owned and copyright by their owners. The solution to this is to use tools that allow free use of images. These sites include publicdomainpictures.net, pixabay.com, morguefile, and unsplash.com. Other sites offer public domain images that include illustrations or clip art. You can also pay a fee for a royalty to use images through stock photography sites such as shutterstock.com, stockphoto.com, or depositphotos.com. When starting with a photograph reference, or even several references combined together, those photographs need to be translated into a form that will simplify edges and values and allow for color and texture. Beginners should look for inspiration in simplified designs. As more collage quilts are created and the skill is mastered, more advanced quilters can begin to develop designs that are detailed and intricate. Expert collage quilters often work to recreate photographs or create photorealistic collage quilts. A beginner design should be simple in lines and shapes, but that doesn't mean it has to look cartoonish either. Begin with something you enjoy. If you like animals, choose your favorite animal. If you love cooking and food, pick an image from the kitchen. Portraits of people can be notoriously challenging, so that might not make a good first choice. Landscapes, still life objects such as fruit or flowers, or even abstract are good designs to develop the technique skills. Value in design is a scale of light to dark. Beginner artists often start with creating a value scale. This value scale exercise helps artists learn and apply value. The value scale can be created by organizing your fabric scraps from light to medium to dark. I spend some time creating the foundation for a collage quilt. This process includes creating a paper artwork and then transferring that onto the foundation fabric. Creating the artwork can involve computer art or drawings on paper. A design can start with a photograph, sketch, drawing, or illustration. When a photograph is the design source, the first challenge is to find the lines. This can be a hurdle that stops some, but it really shouldn't prevent anyone from moving forward with an idea. There are two easy ways to do this. The first method is to make the photograph black and white, either with photo editing software or by making a photocopy. This helps isolate the values and makes the lines easier to locate. A Sharpie can be used to draw lines onto a paper photocopy and darken the lines that are wanted for the design. The other method is to use photo editing software. The software that's best for this includes Adobe Photoshop, but you can use free software like GIMP or Photopea. There are several methods to get the line art you need. The most common process is to remove color from the photo or desaturate. Then use a filter like Find Edges or Edge Detect can be used. This can be a little tricky. This process demands a complete tutorial all its own, and I know people are looking for this. So this is a tutorial I'm thinking about working on. The end result will be line art, or something that looks like a sketch or a coloring book page. It needs to be on paper at the size needed for the art quilt. This will then be used to create the foundation. In this demonstration, I'm using artwork that fits easily onto a piece of printer paper. So I have one 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper with my line art on it. The lines are dark enough that if I place a white piece of foundation fabric over it, I can still see the lines. It does help to use a window or a light box so that light shines through the artwork and the fabric and you can see the lines to trace them. Place the fabric onto the paper, then use a fabric pencil or marker to trace the lines onto the foundation fabric. The lines will probably be covered by collage, so sometimes I use a permanent fabric pen, or you can use a fabric marker that erases with water or heat. Avoid chalk or a fabric marker that disappears really quickly because you're going to need to be able to see the lines through the collage process. A safe choice for fabric is 100% cotton quilting fabric. Of course, any fabric could be a potential for an art collage, but it's important to consider the weight and how much the fabric might fray on cut edges. That's why cotton quilt fabric is a common choice. Choose how many values will be in the design. In my example, there are approximately 3 values: dark, medium, and light. The original sketch shows some of these values and will be used as a reference during the collage process. You can easily organize your fabric scraps into light, medium, and dark values, or more values as the design requires, though it's not really recommended to use more than 7 values. Color choices will depend on the design and what the goal is for the finished artwork. Consider simplifying your first couple of collage art quilts by choosing only a handful of main colors. It won't really just be 2 or 3 because there's going to be variations of value within each color. With so many fabrics to choose from, either in your stash or at the local quilt shop, texture might often be the last thing to look for. In collage, texture contributes to the overall look of an artwork, so it's a little more important to pay close attention to fabric textures. Supplies that are needed depend a little on the technique being used. In addition to the design, foundation fabric, and fabric stash, the following supplies might be required. For the glue technique, you'll need fabric glue and small paintbrushes. Aleene's original tacky glue is suggested, but you can use Elmer's white school glue or even glue sticks. For the pin technique, sharp, flexible straight pins and an optional pin board is helpful. That can vary from a simple sheet of foam board to a covered foam or cork. For the fusible technique, you'll need fusible web paper and an iron. Different fusible webs have different processes, so be sure to read the directions. You'll need small, sharp scissors for precise cuts, and helpful is also a stylus like an orange stick or a pair of tweezers. The moment of truth has arrived. You begin cutting little pieces of fabric from your piles and attaching them onto the foundation fabric. Choose one section at a time to start. Use the design and values as a guide to select and place small pieces of fabric. You can audition pieces by holding them up to the foundation fabric and then adjusting for size, color, value, or texture as needed. Really, this is a process of look and feel. Does it look right in that place? Does it feel like it's going to fit as that value? It's art, so don't be afraid to use that artistic ability that I know you have. For the glue technique, you're going to want to apply glue to the foundation fabric or to the collage piece. I prefer to apply my glue to the foundation fabric. And when you're ready to adhere, you can place small dots of glue on the background fabric or on the back of the fabric piece, and you can spread it lightly with a small paintbrush or even your finger. Place the fabric bit onto the background fabric. Press it down with your fingers, a stylus, or a roller. It will take some time for the glue to dry, but you can continue to develop the rest of the piece in sections. Some collage artists use large chunks of fabric to develop their design, while others use incredibly tiny pieces to create details. A workable size for fabric pieces is about 1/2 inch to about 2 inches squarish. That size gives enough flexibility to work into a design element without being too small to handle or too large and overpowering. For the pin technique, you need to make sure your foundation fabric is on top of something so pins have something to stick into and that you're not going to damage whatever is underneath. So place your pieces of fabric onto the foundation fabric, then use a pin to hold it in place. Over time, there might be many pins, but you can reposition them to hold several pieces at a time. At some point, the pins will need to be replaced with another permanent method of holding the fabric. The foundation fabric can be taken to your sewing machine, and thread work can be used to secure the fabric. Be sure to carefully avoid pins while sewing, as we all know how disastrous that can be. For a little more precision, you can hand sew those pins out. For the fusible technique, you need to do a little bit of advanced planning. Using the fabric you've selected, apply the fusible to each piece of fabric and then cut small bits from it to use in the collage. Fusible brands include Wonder Under, Heat and Bond, Flexifuse, Misty Fuse, Steam-A-Seam, and Soft Fuse. Each brand will have slightly different application instructions and characteristics. As pieces of fabric are prepped with fusible and then applied to the foundation fabric, An iron can be used to set them in place. So when using a fusible, it's important to read the directions. I accidentally picked an Easy Steam brand, which is by Pellon. I've never used it before. I thought I was getting something else, and when I went to use it, I used it incorrectly. When I went back and looked at the directions, I realized that there was paper on only one side, and the way that it functioned was much different than what I was used to. Because there's so many different brands and so many different ways of using fusible, you really need to check the directions and even practice using it before starting your collage quilt. The tendency might be to want to cut shapes to fit within a space. For example, a curve that goes around an edge. For some types of collage, it's better to use smaller pieces to create the curve. Or you can trace and use your own templates from your original line art. Pieced quilts typically use structured shapes like squares, triangles, and rectangles. In collage work, organic shapes can be used. That means a bit of fabric can really be cut into any free-form shape without having to rely on just little squares. I tend to use squares and triangles, but I can also cut curves and really complex shapes because they're more organic. Once the artwork is finished, it can now be made into a quilt. For the size I'm using, this will become a wall hanging. Create the quilt sandwich by layering the artwork layer, the batting, and the backing. For some designs, I use a thread painting step before making the quilt sandwich. Using an interfacing behind the artwork, I can embellish or enhance it with free motion thread work. For these art quilts, I plan to enhance the shapes using free motion quilting. If you don't have a machine that can do free motion, you can use short straight lines on your regular sewing machine, sewing slowly around curves. The quilting should work with, not against the design. Following value lines, contours, and shapes will help to bring out the design. Backgrounds can be filled in using any method, from straight lines like I did in my demo, to free motion fill patterns. Edges can be finished just like a pieced quilt. For wall hangings or for art quilts and shows, a sleeve will need to be added. For this demonstration, I did a collage art quilt triptych. So I did 3 different designs, a tomato, a pepper, and an onion. And I demonstrated the 3 different techniques using those designs: glue method, fusible technique, and pins. Here's my finished collage art quilt triptych. Thanks for joining Soliloquies and watching the video on collage quilting. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more.